Welcome back to another episode of the Opposition Podcast, or if you go by the first comment we got, it is the Cookers Podcast, and I know it is usually on a Thursday, but as you all know, Rukshan is an elitist, and he has decided that this weekend, more important than hanging out with you guys, he's going to go on a holiday with friends that he thinks are more important than you. Shameful, shocking, and you can express your concerns with the situation in the comments on X or YouTube or Facebook, and they come up in the future. Hopefully, we will run it all through Rumble and X, but we are where we are. Rukshan, what would you like to say to the people that are feeling betrayed by your elitism?
Well, it's actually a bit of diversity. You know, you don't know if it's going to be Thursday or Tuesday. It's a bit of a surprise, but maybe it's you, Avi, that's going on the holiday that might be interfering with our typical schedule of the Opposition Podcast on a Thursday. But anyway, guys, welcome to the show. We've got two guests joining us today that Avi will introduce, and we can already see some technical issues. Avi's having trouble with the comment overlay. I blame him completely for this. So, you know, this show, the Opposition Podcast, is not a show without having technical difficulties. That's actually a part of the show itself. So it's a bit of light entertainment for you guys as we progress through this show. But Avi, let's get the show on the road and introduce our guest today. Very important.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you, Rukshan, firstly again, turn down your mics a little bit more, because as much as we love to hear your voice, you are peaking.
Too loud, am I? Is that better?
I think so, yes. You can let us know in the comments what's going on, guys. Introduce our first guest. Are you going to do it, or do you want me to do everything? Technical.
You introduce the first guest, I'll introduce the second guest.
The first guest needs no introduction because he is an actual politician, not like the second guest who's just playing dress-ups. John Ruddick. How you doing, mate? Welcome to the show.
Good evening, Rukshan, Avi, Senator Babette. Thank you very much for having me.
What have you been up to lately?
Well, look, I've got to tell you about something really exciting, okay? I have suffered from Al Gore derangement syndrome for 24 years. I've been the pub bore. I've been warning people Al Gore is the most dangerous person on earth. Now, this is before Inconvenient Truth. I've been a bore about it, okay? I go on and I've read all the books, okay? And now then last November in the state parliament, they passed a stupid net zero carbon bill. So, of course, I got up, gave a little speech, saying it's all garbage. And I said, look, this is all because of everyone's listened to the Pied Piper, Al Gore, okay? Now then, and I attacked Al Gore, okay? Went through his biography because I know his biography better than anybody. I've read them all. I've read 6 biographies at least twice. Now then, 3 months later, this filmmaker from California contacts me on Twitter. He says, hey, John, I just watched your speech. He said, I didn't know half this stuff about Al Gore. I used to work for Al Gore in the 1980s because Gore used to be a conservative Democrat, which don't exist anymore, but he used to be one of them. Anyway, so I said to him, you know what the world really needs, Mr. Filmmaker? His name was Joel Gilbert. I said, we need to make a film about the life of Al Gore because people are not aware of how many inconsistencies there are, how power hungry and how duplicitous this guy is. And he wrote back to me, this is just on the Twitter DM, he says, oh, that's a great idea, I'll do it. We've since had about sort of 10, 20 emails, phone calls, direct messages every day. The film's complete. He's having the world premiere at CPAC in Brisbane in a month, and it's going to be released in the United States in December, and it's a fantastic film. So I'm very excited. Other people have made good documentaries exposing how fake the climate change science is, and they're very good documentaries. It doesn't move the needle. I'm hoping that if the average Joe Blow out there can watch this film and understand that we're dealing with a Pied Piper, a grand charlatan, people will hopefully start to wake up that we're living under a mass delusion. So the movie's called, if you can go to my Twitter feed, it's Joel Gilbert. It's The Climate According to AI Al Gore.
Well, that was certainly an introduction. I'll leave number 2 up to you, and maybe put a timer on him so he doesn't waffle on like the first one.
Well, guys, just to digress from what Avi's talking about in regards to this not being a proper senator or a politician, this is actually the hardest working senator in the federal parliament from the UAP, Senator Babette. I'm not being paid to say any of these things. Senator Babette, thanks for jumping on the Opposition Podcast. Of course, you're a regular during our last season, and it's good to have you back on as we restart this new show. What's been happening?
G'day, guys, and thank you for having me on, of course. I'm here in Canberra. Obviously, what is it now? It's about 7 o'clock or so. Been here since very early this morning, been fighting the globalists all day long. Bit spent, but I think the Senate's got a couple more hours to go until we can go back to our hotel rooms, go to sleep and wake up and come back in the morning and fight the globalists again. You know, like Harvey said, I am not a politician. I cannot stand politicians. I'm just the guy who had enough, who put his hand up and said, instead of complaining on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, and wherever else all you jack-offs complain, I'm going to put my hand up and I'm actually going to do something to better my country. I put my hand up. I'm here. I'm not a career politician. I don't intend to be. I'm going to do my one term. And after my one term, you know what I hope? I hope that one of you people watching this broadcast here puts your hand up and you do something to save the country that you say you love so much, because complaining on social media is not going to get it done. Having said that, thank you guys for having me on.
I feel like that was a crack at us too. Complaining on social media is not going to get it. I feel like he's having a go.
You kept it short. That was quite short.
Well,
I was expecting longer, but that was quite short. So well done.
Hey, gentlemen, I think we need to start a petition. This is not the first time I've heard Senator Babette say he's only going to do one term. I think we're going to start a petition demanding that he recontest. Now he's got another 3 or 4 years. Good. But I mean, you're a young man, Senator Babette. You're out there doing great things. I hope you can sort of reconsider this if we can get a sufficient petition going.
Get a petition to add it to the petition that's calling me to be fired. I think there's one of those going around as well. At least people are calling for it.
I think I made that
fired.
petition.
It's not going to happen, guys. You're not going to get me fired. I'm not going anywhere while my term is here. But look, I think the most important thing that people can take away from this is that they have to do more. Too many people sit on socials and have a cry all day long, but when it comes time to putting the shoes to the pavement, they don't do anything. They just like to cry in the comments. So that really needs to end. I mean, the globalists don't sleep. The Marxist left don't sleep. They're in this building all night, early morning, late nights, pushing their agenda. And unfortunately, there aren't enough people like me pushing the opposite agenda, because you're sitting on your ass at home eating popcorn, watching Netflix, and complaining about what's happening in the country. Stop doing that. Get off your ass, guys.
Can I ask something? And this is a serious question, but I've just got to bring something up because I've just realised a serious issue about you there, Mr. Babette. I've just got to bring it up for 1 sec so that we can actually understand what's going on here, because I feel like there's a crime has been committed and I'm suspecting that you might be the one responsible.
Babette's getting ready to pull the plug.
He's ready to pull the plug. Hold on. Don't pull the plug yet. Boom. What do we got? How do I bring all of us onto screen? Yes. No. With the screen. There we go. Babette, I want to know if you stole Senator Payman's flag, because she doesn't seem to have an Australian flag, and you seem to be slightly overloaded on him. Yeah. So can you set the record straight? Is that the reason why Payman does not ever have an Australian flag in any of her photos or her interviews or anything? She seems to have plenty of Palestinian and Aboriginal flags. Be honest.
I'm going to be delicate with what I say here.
Please don't.
First of all, I appreciate that Senator Payman had the courage to leave the Labor Party because her views didn't align with what the Labor Party was saying at the time. Good on her. Do I agree with her on everything? No, I don't. Am I glad she's here as a part of a democratic process? Of course I am. We need more independent voices in this place. On the Australian flag issue, I would wish that this senator would, put the Australian flag on her chest wherever she went. I would like to see that. I would hope that the senator has the Australian flags in her office and not another flag. But, those decisions are for her. She does what she does. I may not agree. I'm obviously Australia first all the way. Her and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, obviously, as you probably can guess. But I'm just glad that she's here.
I'm more interested
advocating what she
in
believes
what I'm more interested in what you do agree with her on, because it sounds like from that little rant, there's things that you have in common with her. What can you name some of those?
Look, I'll give you one example. When it comes to protecting the family, saying that, leave the children alone, don't push radical gender ideologies onto children and things of that nature. I'm sure her and I would see eye to eye. I haven't talked about it before, but, I'm sure that from what I know
I've never heard her.
We might agree on.
Are you assuming because of her religion she would be share your position?
I also assumed her gender. I did that too.
I do find it funny she never does bring up those issues, because I think her target market, which is the woke left. What do you think, Mr. Ruddick? I think her target market, her constituents is generally the woke left, and they probably wouldn't agree with what Senator Babette is saying that he would see.
Issues.
Well, look, it's very rare in Australian political history that a Labor member has crossed the floor, okay, and the rule is they did take a week or two to do it, but the absolute rule is, without sort of any appeal, is that when it happens, that they get kicked out of the Labor Party. So, I'm the only thing I can sort of say positively about her is, yeah, that did take courage, because she really did believe it. But look, what I don't like about Senator Payment is this. She came to Australia, or her family did at least, from Afghanistan. I really would have thought
she did too. I think she did. She was arrested.
Right. Okay. Now, surely, Afghanistan is hell on earth, and you'd have to, particularly for females. And what I really just can't get my head around, why aren't these people saying, "I am so grateful to live in paradise," which is where she's now living. And not only is she living here, she's a freaking senator. Okay, so she should be so pro-Australia, so intensely pro-Australia. And I just don't like. I don't like refugees coming to this country and who then bring the politics from their failed country
and the problems.
Here. And the problems. Yeah, they should be saying, "I love Australia." Now she can be proud of her Afghan culture, etc. But
they make really decent food, I got to say.
Yeah, okay, good. Drop the politics is what I say. And to tell you, the immigration policy of a country is in many ways the most important policy, because it's basically irreversible. Now, if they put the taxes up too high, well, we can have an election, we can drop the taxes, okay, and other things. But the immigration is very important. And if I was the immigration czar of this country, I would say, look, if we've had a group of people out here from a certain part of the world, and they bring their hyper politics from their old failed country out here, we really don't want any more, okay? We want, most migrants get here, they land at the airport, and they say, "I can't believe it. I'm so happy. I'm so grateful. I'm going to make the most of my life in Australia."
I definitely agree with that. I certainly don't like the failed politics coming into this country from other countries, because, we don't have to deal with those problems here as well. It's got nothing to do with us. And bringing that kind of animosity here, whether, with the issues that we're facing and talking about right now, or any other country for that matter, it's not necessarily helpful for Australia, and for us to be, dedicating our time to issues that perhaps don't actually impact the lifestyle here in Australia. I think it's unnecessary, particularly for those in positions of power, especially if they're spending most of their time, instead of seeing to their communities, they're worrying about foreign issues that don't have much to do with their actual role at all.
I'm all up for them. If they come out to Australia, they're successful, they get a bit of money, a bit of influence, whatever. I'm all up for them doing humanitarian work, helping organise that, okay? But if they're going to come to Australia and they want to become political, well, shouldn't their starting point be, Australia's such a great country? But to come out here, Australia's been so grateful to them, and then they're critical of Australia, okay? I don't get it.
The Greens are very good at this, being critical of Australia, especially one particular member of the Greens. I won't name her, but almost every other time I hear her speak, or at least that I can pay attention to it anyway, she's always ragging on Australia and saying how bad the place is. I've actually delivered quite a few speeches about this topic before, about the issue of multiculturalism. I'm the only one in the Senate so far that's come out staunchly and said that multiculturalism doesn't work at all. When you import people into Australia from cultures that are opposed to your own, you're setting up the country for social unrest eventually, like we're seeing in the UK right now. Now, people will conflate multiculturalism and multi-race. They're two different things. I have no issue with people from other races coming to Australia, but I do have an issue when people come to the country and they create what I like to call parallel societies, where they don't adopt our culture, our way of life, our way of seeing the world, our way of looking at issues, and they come here and they create, like I said before, parallel societies within Australia. I think that's a recipe for disaster, and I think the UK right now is where we're going to end up at some point in the future. I mean, I'm an immigrant. I've got nothing against immigrants, but when you decide to call Australia home, become an Australian. Don't be that person. Don't bring your foreign culture here and try and create that parallel society here. It's not the right way to look at things, and I think that's going to become increasing a bigger and bigger issue.
Do you think it's multiculturalism itself, or it's when you import cultures that do clash? Because I look at I grew up around Caulfield, but then in my teenage years I lived in Murrumbina, Oakley, and I love the Greek area. And they've created like this enclave there where it's like little Greek paradise where you get the culture, you get the beautifulness of the culture, the restaurants, the people, the music. You're walking.
I don't think that culture and Australian culture is that different, because the foundation of, let's say, the Greek culture, as one example, and the Australian culture that we have here already is the Judeo-Christian values that culture is founded on, that our shared cultures are founded on. So, people like to rag on, Judeo-Christian values, but I think Judeo-Christian values is literally the foundation of the West. And many of the problems that we have at the moment in the Western world, in our civilization, is a direct result of the degradation of those Judeo-Christian values. That is a huge problem, and we need to go back to those values if we want to save our civilization. Because I think our civilization is teetering on an edge right now. And probably within my lifetime or the next generation's lifetime, the West will look nothing like what it looks now. And we will lose what we all love so much about Western civilization.
So I think I get it. It's a clash of cultures. That's what you're talking about. You don't want to import clashing cultures as opposed to having multicultures here that do not clash.
Are aligned.
But it's not about the importing, is it, Avi, though? Like, we talked about this last week briefly. It's not really about where people are coming from. It's about how those people are integrated into society here.
No, I mean importing the cultures. So the people that are carrying them. Cultures don't just fly here. Although these days the internet, African American culture.
If you go to certain countries in the world, like, you adhere by that culture. Like, I've traveled in the parts of the Middle East, and there's certain rules and customs and norms that I adhere to when I travel to that country, because out of respect for the cultural norms of that country. Like, it should be the same when people come to a country like Australia or the UK or Canada. People should respect what Senator Babbitt was talking about, the basic foundational values of that country. But when you get people into this country, and then there's people within this country, politicians and certain parties, who are telling people, hey, change the foundation of this country to make it more like where you came from, I think that's problematic. Like, I don't mind people bringing their food, their music, and all this kind of stuff. That's all fun. You go to parts of the country where it's Little India or Little China. Okay, cool. That's nice. You can have some nice food, whatever. But we don't need everything else that comes with that. We don't need all that, because like Senator Babbitt said, the foundations of these societies in the West, founded on Christianity and those Judeo-Christian values, really have set the standard for the type of life that we live, the lifestyle that we have, the respect that we have for each other, the respect that we have for women, the elderly, like all these type of things. And even for having multi-faiths, the respect we have for that in this country comes from those values. They're hard-fought values. They're values that people come to Australia for, to escape from places that don't have those values. So I'd never understand why there's politicians here, particularly, multi-generational Australians, who have fought for these things, who are so easy now to be like, oh, okay, cool, we'll let these other cultures dominate here. It's ridiculous. We shouldn't let other cultures dominate here. We should have the Western tradition being the dominant, tradition and the thing that people follow in these countries like Australia. I'm fully for that. So I definitely agree with what Senator Babbitt was saying on this regard.
When you visit the Middle East, Rukshan, do they respect your pronouns? She, her?
Yeah. I mean, look, I've traveled in different parts, and there's no place like countries in the West. Even when we talk about things like racism and stuff, like I experience different types of racism in different parts of the world. Being like a South Asian, in certain parts of the Middle East, Indian people, for instance, that people that look like me are looked at more of like a servant class, a working class, and you really feel that in some parts of the world. So you don't really get that in the West the way that we've been brought up. Like it's totally different, right? So when we talk about Western cultures being racist and all this kind of stuff, I see it as complete nonsense because you experience that
That's
in
nonsense.
different ways in other parts of the world as well. So there is those aspects that we have to live with when we travel elsewhere, and we should be so grateful that Australia and other parts of the world that are like Australia try to move away from that. And the reason that we do move away from those things is because of our Judeo-Western values, Christian values, sorry.
Australia is literally one of the least racist countries on planet Earth, on God's green earth. I mean, if you want racism, if you think of Japan, for example, right? People wouldn't think that Japan's a racist country. But if you go to Japan, there are certain bars and places that you can't get into because you're a foreigner. It's like, no, Japanese people only in here, no foreigners allowed. Legitimately, I've been to Japan before and I've been knocked back because I was not Japanese. These kind of things happen around the world.
Is it because you're not Japanese, or they just didn't like you?
They just didn't like me. They were like, "That's that UAP guy."
There's that cooker. Ruddick, have you ever been kicked out of a restaurant or bar in Japan?
My sister-in-law lives in Japan, and look, Senator Babette is right. It is a very, very monocultural country, mono-ethnic country, and they got no plans on changing it. Okay, look. The point about Australia, look, it's not just Australia; it's all the English-speaking world is extremely diverse and welcoming. And it's where do all the refugees want to go to? All the migrants: US, Canada, Australia, the UK, and New Zealand. Okay, so and it's, I think part of this is, I think the little island of England over the last sort of 2,000 years has sort of been a bit of a refugee camp for people who are having a hard time in Europe. They just sort of run away to England to start a new life. And this is why the English people, you get red-headed people, blonde people, dark brown, light brown, black, you get everything. You get freckly people, olive-skinned people. It's a real mongrel race, the Anglo-Saxon, and that's may not be a bad thing. But look, I reckon, now this is not Libertarian Party immigration policy. I want to make that clear. I don't want to get in trouble with the party. The party is coming out with an immigration party policy soon, and I'll endorse it 100%. But my John Ruddick immigration policy is very simple. We need a 5-year immigration pause. Senator Babette mentioned what's happening in England at the moment, which is horrifying, okay? It is absolutely horrifying. And do we want that to happen in Australia? Absolutely not. Any responsible prime minister, political figure in this country would be saying, well, let's put the handbrake on because we absolutely do not want that level of social, hostility and violence, okay? And so I don't know what's wrong with a 5-year pause. We've been so generous. And on balance, I think immigration's been a good thing. Let's have a 5-year pause. Now, you can't have a 100% pause. If somebody wants to migrate to Australia and they've got $100 million to invest, well, they can come on down, okay? And there's other complications around marriage visas, like if an Aussie goes over to Canada and falls in love and wants to bring them back here, well, as long as it's a reciprocal number, but a general 5-year pause, particularly on the refugees. And I think that would be a very popular policy myself.
I can agree with that one. And speaking of the immigration issue, I'm curious to know what you guys think about the Prime Minister, Mr. Albanese, deciding that we need so many people to come to Australia from Gaza. Because when you look at the immigration intake from the neighboring countries like Egypt, for example, they're not taking anyone in, or hardly anyone in. And Australia's taken in thousands of people from Gaza, where the majority of people support Hamas. What the hell is going on there? What is Mr. Albanese smoking? Because if I was Prime Minister, I would not be doing that, especially when the neighboring countries around there are saying, no, we don't want these people because it could cause a problem. What the hell is that about?
I think part of it is that There's a lot of Middle Eastern Muslims have come out to the country in the last 2 generations, and they overwhelmingly vote Labor. They've got involved in the Labor Party, etc., etc. They're involved in the branches and they're donors, etc. And they've got a lot of influence there. And I think that they've applied pressure to Labor. Well, I think that's going to bite them on the bum because, I mean, they're talking about running Muslim candidates. And who's going to be the loser out of that? The Labor Party. So, at the end of the day, for these left-wing parties, only one thing matters: getting re-elected. Okay? They love power, like we see in the US. They love power more than the right-wingers do, and they'll do anything. So maybe they'll start to say, well, maybe we need to be cautious here about letting in more people, because they may not be Labor voters.
Crazy. I dare say this is a good lead-in to the next issue, because I think this is the one issue that those that they think that they're bringing in to support their agenda won't in fact support this agenda, and don't support their agenda, just like Payman. I think you're right, you're on point. She doesn't talk about it. I think as they get more involved in politics, as we see more religious politicians come in, especially from refugee backgrounds, they're going to push back at this exact kind of stuff. The book. Now, I remember last time we had you on, Babette, I think it was last time we had you on, we were discussing this exact book. And funnily enough, I think we had the libertarian Victorian Limbrick was on the show, and you guys had a bit of a punch up. Let's maybe we can go round 2, although I don't know if Victoria, New South Wales or Limbrick and Ruddock hold the same views on this exact matter. What's your reaction to this news that essentially the book is being awarded an honour on the exact week that they're pushing for the social media? Well, they're actually doing it, the social media.
That book is utter garbage. Now, a lot of people said that I wanted that book banned. I never said I wanted that book banned. What I said was that book is not appropriate to be on school shelves or freely available for children to get their hands on. That book, as it's showing on screen right now, it's got instructions in it for, I can't remember the exact age, so don't quote me. It was like 9 years old to 14 years old, or close to that anyway. Oh, it says 10 to 15 on the screen right there. So between 10-year-old and 15-year-olds, that's who it was aimed at. And it was an instruction manual on how to have all sorts of perverted sexual activity for children. That was my big issue with that book. And I still have that issue today with that book. It was authored by, I think it was Yumi Steins and Melissa Kang, I think it was. And the fact that this book is going to get an award just rubs me the wrong way. Completely. It shouldn't be on shelves for kids to pick up. It just shouldn't.
Well,
especially at that age, 10 years old.
Well, last time Limbrick made the argument, and Rukshan, correct me if I'm wrong, Limbrick made the argument that he's a free speech absolutist, even though I don't actually think that this is an issue of free speech, because I don't think anyone's saying, well, maybe there are some people saying, but nobody in that conversation was saying it should be banned. He was saying, I remember him saying that it should be treated like any pornography, where you have to be over the age of 18 to be able to purchase or borrow.
I was saying that. That was me.
Yeah, I'm talking about you.
Oh, you're talking about me. All right, good.
I'm talking about you in the last episode. You were the one making that argument, which I agree with, because I think as a parent, I look at that book and I think that book is almost worse than pornography, because it's directed at kids as an instruction manual of what to do. If a kid picks up a pornography or ends up on Pornhub, they know they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. Here, it's the other way. So the idea of pushing it out of school libraries and allowing kids to just borrow or buy it or encouraging it, I support that. I don't think books should ever be burned. But where are you on this one, Mr. Ruddock?
Well, look, okay, I believe the book should be banned. Now, let me explain. I believe families should ban it. I believe schools should ban it. I believe teachers should ban it, okay? I believe any sane human being will ban this book. It's a bad book. The question is, do we want a government that's so powerful It can reach into our lives and say, if you read that book, well, we're going to threaten violence against you. We're going to get the police to come and knock on your door. No, we don't. We don't want a government that big. We want a night watchman government, a government that doesn't interfere much. Government is the most dangerous thing in the history of humanity. Government's the one that it commits all the atrocities, okay? Left, right, whatever. It's the government. When the government gets out of control, so terrible things happen, like we saw with COVID. So we do want the book banned, but we don't want the state to ban it. And we want people to...
I agree with you.
Yes.
I actually agree with you. And here's the issue. When we had a strong religious foundation, a strong Judeo-Christian foundation to our country, the people themselves would push back against a publication like this socially. So you wouldn't need the government to step in to do that banning, because they would self-regulate that book.
But again, I'm getting confused by this conversation here. When you say banning, are you asking them to ban it from the state schools?
Government should ban it.
I'm asking
the families themselves.
I understand that. I understand that. But when we're talking about the state schools, for example, I don't even think this is a position for a private school, because every parent has parents are essentially giving permission by sending their kids to a private school. You can protest with your cash. You can pull your kids out, or you can refuse to send them to those classes. But I'm talking about in state schools, where essentially the ones in charge is a state anyways. Do you think, Ruddick, the state should stop these books from being in classrooms, in school libraries, in public libraries, available to children? Treat it like an adult's book.
Well, look, in a libertarian utopia, there'd be no such thing as state schools, okay? Because we'd have school vouchers, which we won't get into now, but
we're not there.
We're not there. So while we still do have state schools, yes, the Department of Education should ban this school. Now, of course, what's happening is the reverse is happening. The Prime Minister's Literary Award, this is on the shortlist. We're celebrating this book. It's a perversion. Really don't know why Albo's doing it, because, I mean, this ain't a vote winner, okay? There's about, I'd say 1 to 2% of the population think this book's great. I'd say less than 1% of parents would buy this for a book. Some wackos will, okay? But why is Albo doing this? Why? I mean, this is a vote loser for them. So I think it's good that it's being discussed. I mean, it just shows you that the left today is not the left of Bob Hawke and Paul Keating, and when they were sort of, all they believed was a bit more social welfare. This is really wacky stuff. Let's hope Donald Trump wins in about 50 days. He's the best hope we've got to reverse this tsunami of craziness which is overtaking particularly the English-speaking world. They don't do books like this in Asia or the Middle East or Africa or Eastern Europe, maybe a little bit in Western Europe, but it's the English-speaking world which has gone completely nuts in the last generation.
Yeah.
So let's hope Mr. Trump can win and start to turn back this craziness.
Well, on the point of that article that you've shared there, Avi, I guess it's about this verification age for children being stricter now. So the government pretty much stepping in saying that, kids can't be on social media or whatever at this particular age. And it's interesting, this comparison between these two things, because you have within the school system, for instance, children being exposed to all types of different things, being, I guess, awarded by the Prime Minister in this sense. And at the same time, perhaps parents who might want their children at a younger age to be on social media, they're now forbidden, through these laws from being on social media. So it shows you that government really does have control, whether we like it or not, in terms of how they can expose children to different things that they want them to be exposed to at a certain age. So I'm definitely for protecting children online. I'm not arguing.
It actually just exposes it exposes the contradiction in the Labor government. You got, on one hand, they're saying kids should have access to everything they're being. It's just like when they say that they should raise the age of criminal responsibility, but they should lower the age of voting. Like, which way is it? Are kids got too much responsibility? They're too free, or and they're unable to cope and be held to account, held responsible for their actions? Or are they able to take everything in and you can give them sex ed books and they will know how to handle that information responsibility? Which way is it? You can't have it both ways.
Look,
That's
there is a
good
very
point, and
important
you're completely
point.
right. And this whole push to sexualize children, look, this has to be pushed back against by normal everyday people. We have to put an end to stuff like this. It's gone way too far. And I think the issue is that the radical Marxists have gotten into really every single institution that I can think of in our nation at the moment, and they've infiltrated everything, and they're pushing their agenda every single day. This goes back to what I said before, how the normal everyday people have to get more involved in the political process and get off their butts basically and push right back against them, because if they don't, this is just going to accelerate. I mean, you've got talks happening at the moment openly at the global level where people are trying to rebrand pedophilia as minor attracted people. This is happening. This is going to happen unless we stand up and really push back firmly against these people, because they're nuts, these radical Marxists.
Gentlemen, there's an important point I want to make about this, the being 16. The government say you've got to be 16 to be able to access social media. Now, this sounds fine at face value, but it's absolutely insidious. This is part of the digital ID. The government has set up some infrastructure, very powerful infrastructure, where they can turn off people's access to social media. Now, at this stage, the infrastructure is saying, it's just about preventing under 16-year-olds, and we've got to protect them. Okay. But what I believe is going to happen in the future is there'll be another crisis in 5 years. There'll be COVID, or there'll be the war on terror, or what? There'll be some crisis, and then they'll say, look, it's just as a short-term emergency, we've got to shut off social media access to those evil right-wing cookers. Okay. Now, I know they shut a lot of us down during COVID, but look, basically, enough of us stayed afloat. Okay. A lot got killed off, but we were most of it.
All the controlled opposition, like Rukshan, managed to.
Yeah, that's controlled opposition. So the thing is that they've now got this ability. I think what they saw that 85% of Australians appeared to be quite happy to be treated like farm animals during COVID, and I think the big state central planners licked their lips and said, "Okay, let's keep going. Digital ID," and we'll say, "Well, it's just to protect kids." Now, look, parents should be protecting kids, not the state. Okay, but the worst thing is they'll then say, look, they've got the ability to deny access to social media. Social media is the future of media. Everybody knows that. Okay, so then they'll say they'll shut off right-wingers. Now, once they've shut off the right-wingers, we're the only ones resisting the George Orwell state. Okay, so once if we're all taken out, the rest of the people that have done nothing, okay, the middle ground that aren't that political or they're just sort of cowardly and weak, well, they're finished. Okay, they will then just be living like farm animals, and the radical left, of course, will be cheering it on. So don't fall for this trap, viewers, about so we've got to protect social media for under 16s. It's a Trojan horse for something very insidious.
Yeah, well, this is how the e-safety commission came about. It was all about protecting children online, right? That's how they kind of sold it to everyone, and everyone was almost on board back then, because you're like, you got to protect your kids online from being exposed to nasty things. But what's happened with the e-safety commission is it's kind of evolved into this this all-seeing, all-controlling force that's trying to implement all types of control over our lives in terms of how we access content online, or whether it's even from overseas. And you're seeing just how powerful these organizations can become. And I touched on this point last week as well, when it comes to these laws around children and these verification systems. The system, like John Roddick was saying, has to be built. And what better place than to implement it at a younger age, when no one's really paying attention? It's at school or whatever, that age group. And as they go into adulthood, these children have already been enrolled into this digital ID system, and it's just normal part of their existence. And slowly the people like us who are fighting against this and showing the evils of this type of system are no longer there, and it's all being implemented in this in this school system type manner.
Yeah, that's right, Rukshan. And these central planners, they think in decades or in generations even. That's how they think. They're not thinking tomorrow or next year or even in 5 years, decades at least. That's how they do business. And the Prime Minister, I think it was either yesterday or today, he actually came out and he said he would they want to work out a way of how to get around VPNs as well. So if you think your VPN is going to save you, it's not going to save you at all. They are deadly serious about getting this through. Now, the other thing that people at home need to understand as well is that both the Liberal Party and the Labor Party have the exact same policy. Peter Dutton came out recently.
Oh, no.
I don't know if it was today or it was yesterday. He said, should he win the next election, he would have this up and running within the first 100 days of his government coming to power. So, and back, Rukshan, you mentioned the E-Safety Commissioner.
That's
now, the
the
office
Liberals.
of the E-Safety Commissioner was set up under the Liberal Party. It was their idea. It was completely.
And they love her.
their
They
idea,
they
love
support that lunatic.
it.
They support her.
They love it.
I can't understand how the Liberal Party does not see what the E-Safety Commission, what E. Karen is doing. Like, if E. Karen wins, there will be no opposition. Not that there is an opposition now, but she wants. But why do they agree with it? How do they?
Because
for what
at the
reason?
end of the day, both Labor and Liberal, they'll argue like cats and dogs about really issues that are inconsequential, issues that don't really matter. But on the big ticket issues, they are always agreeing. So, like we just said, the Office of the E-Safety Commissioner, digital ID, this desire to ban, at this stage anyways, children under 16 from accessing social media. And like John Ruddick said, that will be expanded to everyone else eventually. That once that framework is in place, everyone's going to be forced to sign up so the government and the corporations can see exactly what you're up to online, make it easier for them to control you. It's coming. It is going to come. But what's going to happen in another 10, 20 or 30 years? I can see a future where we have a social credit system type system in place in Australia, and people will say, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory," blah blah blah. But they already have a similar system in communist China, where if you say something online that the government of the day does not like, you can be penalized for saying that thing. So I'll give you an
pretty sure it
example.
happens in the UK as well, man. It happens in the communist
I don't know
UK
why
as
you're
well.
pointing to China. Keir Starmer's doing it.
Keir Starmer's already doing it.
They're kicking in doors and jailing people for offensive posts, but you're
social
free,
media posts.
but you're free
Yeah,
to
of
stab.
course.
But you're free to go around stabbing people. You'll be right. It's insane.
It's crazy. So we're at the moment we're sleepwalking into a digital prison. That's what we're doing. And the average person really needs to really pay attention to what the politicians are up to in Canberra, because you may not feel it today, but the next generation or your kids, they're going to grow up in a prison that doesn't have bars and things like this, but a digital prison. You really got to pay attention and push back against this.
There was an awesome comment, Avi. I don't know if you saw it from DML, and it said the point of this system is not to stop kids from signing up; it's to make adults sign up to verify their age when they use these social media systems. Right? That's the comment there. So it's not to get kids to sign up; it's to force adults who want to use social media to sign up. I think that hits the nail on the head of what's going on.
And I think when you see these kind of laws coming by, you need to critically think, and you got to think about how it can be used and abused. Because if we learned anything from COVID, it's that government took legislation that was already in place, that was put in place, and they abused it. Not for its intended purpose, what we were sold. The counterterrorism legislation is the best example. I personally backed that counterterrorism legislation when, back in 2015, 2014, at the height of the war against ISIS, the war on terror. Yes, we need to get those terrorists. Yes, we need legislation to be able to give police the power to find and hold them accountable. And then what do we see in 2020? It was being used against civilians who were dissenting, who were protesting, lawfully protesting, practicing their most basic fundamental human right in protesting crazy government overreach. And we had given them all the power to. Remember, they were kicking in doors. You're talking about the future. They were kicking in doors here over Facebook posts for inciting people to rebel. So it's something we've already seen here, and hopefully people have learned. Because as a parent, I don't think it's such a bad idea to shut kids off the internet. I support that idea 100%. The problem is I don't.
You that makes that decision.
Exactly. I don't trust the government to do it. I, as a parent, need to do it. Now, I also do understand the flip side of it. As a parent, it's really hard to ban your kids from something that every other kid has. And every parent feels that way. But surely there is a better way of empowering parents without giving government power to shut parents out, to essentially you're criminalizing kids being able to have access to it. And who are they really going to hold accountable? Who are they going to target if kids are on the internet? Or what are they going to put in place to stop kids from being on the internet? It's not targeted as kids, as that comment suggested.
And look, all social media is not bad, right? So even like the way that the world is going these days, these kids on social media, some of them are very creative, they're very talented, they're finding different talents a lot earlier on in life, whether this is TikTok creators, whatever. I know people have different views, but there is actually good parts of social media as well. And you're going to have this, I guess, a generation of Australian children at a certain age who might not be exposed to this kind of social media, whereas in other parts of the world, kids have access to these social media. So we have to think about how those things impact Australian children as well. So I think this kind of rule of just cutting off kids that, they have to be from 16 onwards. And, kids are going to be creative. They're going to find ways around this. I don't think, the way that this is all going to play out, it's a lot different than what's being talked about at the moment. I think I don't think we see the full picture of how this is going to play out, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, you're exactly right, Rukshan. Kids are naturally geniuses with electronic devices. Okay, they're geniuses. They're going to get around this one way very, very easily. The really bad part about these laws is if they fully come in, the Liberal Labor supporting everything, a lot of parents will say, oh, well, I don't need to police, I don't need to sort of parent my kids about this, I don't need to keep an eye on, I don't have to be that active on this because the government's looking after it for me. Well, the government won't be looking after it for them. If the parents sort of have kids and they think, it's really up to me to protect my kids from bad things on the internet, then they will be a lot more proactive about it, okay? And they will be able to police it within the family a lot better. Now, what they do, you're talking, Avi, about the laws that came in under the War on Terror. When these intelligence agencies and the Big Brother wants to expand, there's always three excuses about why they need to do it. They say we need to protect kids, we need to stop terrorists, we need to stop pedophiles. And 95% of people say, oh, well, of course, I support that. Of course, we've got to get those pedophiles, got to get those terrorists, got to protect kids, okay? And so most people fall for it. But as we saw with COVID, these things, that was the excuse to bring them in. It sounds like this children being not able to access social media under the age of 16 is definitely going to become the law of the land, okay? Because both parties support it, okay? Now, it's going to all backfire. Now it's going to be is it when it is the law of the land, are they really going to have police knock on the door, say, oh, I think your 14-year-old daughter's looking at social media? They're not going to care one little bit about it. The real purpose is to bring up, as the very good, you mentioned Rukshan, the very good message that came across. Yeah, it's about getting everyone to sign up saying, yeah, I'm definitely over the age of 16. It's about shutting down right-wingers when the next crisis comes. That's what it's about.
All right.
We're the only ones resisting.
100%.
Now we move from
the left was all about, no war and let's push back against government overreach. When the left used to be like that. Now all they want is to start wars and to control your life. They're all authoritarians now. I don't know what happened, but that's crazy.
Speaking of the loony left, tomorrow's an exciting day. So the polls are in. I've been loving how people are telling me, people always ask me, I don't know if you guys get this. You probably all get this. I meet people on the street. They're like, oh, who are you predicting to win the US elections? And I've said, from the second Trump got shot, it was done. It was done before then, but it was done at that point, especially because of the way he naturally handled it. We've talked about this before. He handled it so well that it almost felt like he'd done it to himself because it was just so perfect. And I know that a lot on the left, they believe that he did do it himself still to today. But as we can see, they swapped out Biden for Harris, and it did boost something within the Democratic Party, no doubt. They were excited because they went from 0% chance to 0.1 of a chance to win, and it re-energized the party. But it was going to come crashing down. Firstly, when she had her first interview, and of course her debate.
When she speaks, it comes crashing down. My goodness, that woman is a queen of word salads.
It is crashing down indeed today. They're saying, when the leftist media is reporting, so the New York Times and the Guardian and all these characters are reporting that it's now neck and neck, they're in major trouble. But tomorrow's debate, let's start there. Radik, what's your prediction for the debate?
Well, look, this will be Trump's 8th presidential debate. Yeah, 3 versus Hillary, 3 versus Biden. Then he had that was in 2020. Then he had another debate in June where he demolished Biden. Now, Kamala has had 1 vice presidential debate. And so Trump certainly goes in with the experience, okay, and he's coming off a win. Last time, he basically took our US president, Joe Biden. So, but look, I think that what Kamala's going to be doing is just sort of playing for a draw. She's not going to try and hit a 6 or a home run in the US parlance. And, but look, Trump will be Trump, okay? And look, I suspect Trump will come out the winner tomorrow, okay? But I suspect it'll probably be not that eventful in these things. I think there's going to be so much rehearsal on both sides. There has been a ton of money come in for Kamala since Biden got knocked off. But the poll, she did have a very impressive honeymoon, no doubt about that, just because people were relieved to get rid of Joe and the media were gushing over her. I've started to realize she's not doing any live interviews. She's not doing any press conferences. I think the media...
She's not doing podcasts. Trump has been smashing out those 2-hour podcasts.
So look, I'm scared to say that I think Trump's going to win this election. I'm only scared to say it because in 2016 I said no. Well, I've loved Trump since the 1980s, by the way. But I said in 2016 no, Hillary's going to win this. I thought the polls can't be that wrong. And in 2020 I said no, Trump's going to win it. So I've got it 2 out of 2 wrong. So that's why I'm reluctant to say that I think Trump will win on this occasion.
Surely statistically you can't be wrong for a third time.
Well, I hope you're right, Albie. Yes.
Babette, what's your prediction for tomorrow's debate?
My prediction is whatever happens, the media is going to run cover for Kamala Harris. Whatever happens. And at the end of the day, all Trump has to say is look at the records. Look what was happening under my watch and how the country was. And look what's happening under your watch, Miss Harris. Obviously, you failed as a vice president completely. And whenever Kamala Harris comes out and says, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, Kamala, you've been the vice president now for 4 years. You could have done this or that. Why haven't you been doing it? Why don't you do it right now? Why don't you do it right now? So whichever way you cut this, in a fair world, Trump wins hands down just off his previous record, and Kamala loses. But unfortunately, Trump hasn't got that mainstream media support, that globalist media support. Everything he does, they find a bad angle, they twist it, they make it look bad. Kamala steals his policies, like no tax on tips, for example, and the media doesn't call it out. The corporate mainstream media doesn't call it out. All that's happening is they're doing everything they can to make her look good because she's their preferred candidate. Why is she their preferred candidate? Because she's cheap. That's what she is. She is easy to, well, she's already been purchased. She can easily be controlled. She'll do what is told. She'll do what she is told. And Trump is an outsider. Trump has money. He doesn't need this. He will do what's best for America. We already know this because that's what he did before. We don't have to guess what a Trump presidency looks like, what a second Trump presidency looks like, because we just had one. We've had a Trump presidency, and we don't have to guess what a Kamala Harris presidency looks like either, because she's currently the vice president and the country's in tatters. And people always have a go at me. They say, why do you care what happens in America? I care what happens in America because whatever happens there eventually filters its way right here to Australia. So America, essentially it leads what I like to call the Anglosphere, the English-speaking world, UK, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. It leads that. And without a strong, proud, prosperous America, you're not going to have a strong, proud, prosperous Australia, whether you like it or not. Those are just the facts. And which is why you may have guessed I support Donald John Trump.
You support Trump? I picture as a Kamala.
Crazy, isn't it?
You know what's interesting, Rukshan? Today I was, I have the ABC always playing at the background. You want to know what the enemy is saying. And I found it interesting when they were talking about this debate tomorrow. Their expert, US elections expert or whatever he is, was basically saying, so what we can expect of tomorrow's debate is a lot of untruths by Trump. And the question is, how Kamala, or how do you pronounce it? I pronounce it wrong because Kamala. Can we just say Kamala?
Well, Trump says 10 different versions.
Yeah, I can't get it right. It's a bit of a tongue twister. But he's saying the question is about how she's going to handle him bullying her.
Yeah.
It's just so one-sided when we haven't even seen the debate yet.
I think that's how it's going to be, right? Like, I definitely echo a lot of the thoughts given by Senator Babbitt. Like, that's kind of how I see it playing out. But in terms of how the debate plays out as a social phenomenon type thing where it's discussed on social media, if Trump, veers into the personal attacks like he normally does, that's just how he debates usually. Like, he just can't help himself sometimes. It's very much going to go down the line of, he's attacking a woman of color, and all this kind of nonsense, right? That's how social media is going to play this. Regardless of whatever happens in the debate, there's going to be moments like this from that debate where people will find those angles just based on the fact that Trump is talking to a woman and she's a woman of color and all this kind of nonsense that they normally play. Like, that's 100% going to happen when it comes to a Trump debate. But what's interesting overall about, in terms of Kamala and her presence in the media and her lack of interviews, everything feels very ominous, almost like the 2020 election where, basement Biden was hiding out and not really doing too many rallies or appearances. There's almost this like feeling in the air of they're keeping her hidden away because if the unbelievable happens where she does, get the winning votes and she's the winner, people won't have stuff to look back on her performance during the election time for that to be believed. You know what I mean? So it does feel a bit ominous like this, and I do see a few comments on the comments that are coming through where people are saying it's rigged, it's a foregone conclusion. I don't necessarily think that, but the way that the Democrats are kind of playing it, they're keeping very low. They're keeping Kamala out of the spotlight, and they're doing the very minimum that they need to do.
Because it's their only chance. I get it for them. It literally is their only chance is to keep her away from the cameras, keep her away from having to live interviews, anything where it's not a teleprompter. For those of you asking what time the debate is, it is actually at 11 a.m. tomorrow, Australian Eastern Standard Time. And you can jump on, I think, the Rebel News Rumble and the Rebel News X. We will be hosting a live show of it. My colleagues in Canada, I'll join that panel just to throw some Aussie banter into the mix to laugh along Kamala. But you guys are more than welcome to join us there. Now, that was, I guess I was asking what your prediction of the actual debate will be. Radic, do you think, who do you think is going to actually win the debate? Not the election, the debate tomorrow.
Look, I think Trump will win it, okay, because he's got a lot more experience. I think people are going to be surprised when they see tomorrow how short, physically short Kamala is. She's got this very off-putting laugh. She doesn't like the spotlight. She did, after there was media pressure saying, why aren't you doing any interviews? Why aren't you doing any interviews? So she sits down, I think, with CNN, but she had to take along her vice president, okay? She can't do an interview by herself.
That guy's so goofy.
And it wasn't a live interview, okay? Well, the debate will be live. She can't get around that. The interview with CNN was about 46 minutes. Only 18 minutes went to friggin' air, okay? They're all the softest ball questions you could possibly ask. And she still stuffed it up. The polls she started tapering off in the polls. I mean, the polls were as tight as a drum. Okay, but the polls, started declining a little bit for her after the CNN interview. So that's when she's got a support dog with her. It's CNN, and, it's not live, it's highly edited. Well, I think the debate goes for about an hour and a half tomorrow. The whole world's going to be watching, okay? And let's see. Now, Trump is actually much better look, Trump. I think the glory era of the Trump presidency was when he was running for the Republican Party primary in 2015 and 2016, and he's up there against all Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. It was a field of about 18 of them, okay, and Trump just walked off Fifth Avenue, just took them out one by one. It was funny. He was hilarious. Now these debates, he doesn't really crack jokes these things are tense as hell. Okay, I once went to a prime ministerial debate between Tony Abbott and Julia Gillard. No, it might have been Kevin Rudd. It was in 2013, and I was just there. I was just like a member of the crowd. I mean, you could cut the room with a knife. Okay, the atmosphere was as tense as anything. Could you imagine what it would be like tomorrow? Now, Kamala is so Trump basically, because he's been through it before, he won't really drop the ball. It is possible Kamala has a collapse, a Joe Biden style complete meltdown, because she's just so flaky. She strikes me as not a very intelligent person. You know, this big cackle she has? It's a sure sign of insecurity.
I love her laugh. Don't be me. And why did you pick on her height?
Well, okay. I hate to be heightist. Okay, I hate to be heightist, Avi, but there's an article out there at the moment that says that the taller candidate for president almost always wins. Okay, so that's probably a terrible thing, but I think people will be quite surprised tomorrow when they just see the significant gap.
Rukshan, don't you want a fellow Indian to win?
She's Indian.
Good point.
She's Indian.
She's Indian.
Yeah. What did you think she was? Sri Lankan.
I heard she was
Black.
African American now.
She's half she's half Jamaican. It depends what crowd she's talking to, but I think she's literally half Jamaican. But she grew up with her Indian side of her mum. But lately, I think it's helped more to connect with the Jamaicans, and I can understand that. You often do that.
Disingenuous. She's the most disingenuous person.
She's a fake Indian,
in
mate.
politics.
She's a fake.
Hold on. She's a fake Indian now.
She's a fake Indian.
Sometimes she has a southern accent. Sometimes she doesn't. This woman is just nuts. She's nuts. And the fact that the media don't call her out on it is just so frustrating. All they do is just go in and defend. You know what? Actually, I got fact-checked recently because I said on X, so the AAP fact-checked me, I said on X that Kamala used to pretty much always identify as Indian, and then only recently, when it's been more convenient for her, she's now going around saying, I'm black, I'm not Indian. But
I don't think she's saying she's not Indian. She's not saying she's not Indian. She's just playing the black side.
She used to identify more with her Indian
all the articles used to be about her being the first Indian senator. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So if you go to my X account and have a look, I've actually got a compilation on there of her just for minutes on end saying that she's Indian, not saying she's black, saying that she's Indian. And then, and all of a sudden, now that it's time for to go up against Donald John Trump in the presidential election, now all of a sudden she's identifying as black. Absolutely disingenuous.
Speaking of batshit crazy Americans, that's what did you call her? Batshit. Is that what you called her? Batshit crazy?
Me?
Yeah. No, somebody says. I think
she's crazy though. Yeah.
I'll admit to it if you need someone to admit to it.
I swear I heard Babette. We're gonna have to fact check Babette again and pass it on to. Speaking of crazy Americans, you've raised a few eyebrows lately, Babette, with your support of Candace Owens. What do you love about Candace so much? And you've been promoting her tour. Are you involved in the tour?
Well, I haven't promoted a tour. I've just said she's on her way here. So I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say. I mean, I like that she'll just speak her mind, and she doesn't really care what anyone thinks. She'll just whatever she thinks whatever comes into her mind, she's going to say it. She's not going to alter what she says to please anyone or to be politically correct or things like that. And I just find that appealing.
Is that so? When you say
Candace on everything, no, I don't. But do I like Candace? Yes, I do.
Okay, so when you say you love your work, Candace, because a lot of people were like, "What?" My phone went off when people saw this comment, which is funny because it didn't get much interaction. Now that I look at it, but what when you say you loved her work, were you responding? Can you tell us what you meant there? Like, were you responding to this, or were you responding?
What did she say? I can't read it. Can you read it out?
So she's talking about. So it was. Hold on. Let's see if. Well, she's talking about somebody's reposted her video. Where is it? Here it is. It's this video. I can play it, can't I?
They are essentially, and this is Sigmund Freud was a Kabbalist, and they believe in bisexuality. They worship Baphomet. They are trying to use psychology to introduce, and I read this in a book by a Jewish historian, David Bacon, to make their religion the religion of the world,
Yes.
right? Which is a pedophile-centric religion that believes in demons. It believes in child sacrifice, and it is the reason that we have the circumstances that we are in today. And most people won't be able to find this history. And they are essentially, and
So
this is
in response to that, like, were you talking about that?
I was talking about what she said previously when she shared it. So she said something like, they're not Christians, they're not Jews, or something like that. They're
so
not Muslims,
Yeah.
but they masquerade as all three. You know,
Okay.
these Satanists. They like to pretend.
So why does she call them Kabbalists?
Kabbalists?
That's what she's
Well,
calling.
I didn't actually watch the clip. I just
right.
was responding to what she said there, and
Okay.
I agree with her because the people.
I don't
that-
think you agree with her though. I think you agree with this comment,
comment.
of
I agree with
her
that comment.
trying to backtrack on what she's saying, because the
Well,
video,
whatever. Look.
the video is but it's important to notice here, because if you say the video itself, she's saying the Jews are pedophiles. Like, Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism. So she's calling Jews pedophiles. Then she's going, they're not Jews. They're not, like, she's walking it back.
Anyway, whatever. I was agreeing with that comment right there.
So
They're
you
neither
don't-
Jews, Muslims nor Christians.
No, because I know,
I thought that was
noticed,
interesting.
like, in our conversations, you always talk about Judeo-Christian values. I don't think she agrees with that anymore. So I think it's important. A lot of people ask, what is it about her current work that you think is good? Do you think her current...
I like the fact that she's willing to just call things out, whatever it might be, whether you agree with her or not. I like her bravery, because it does take a certain amount of bravery to go out there and say things that a lot of people might find controversial. I especially like her work around how she's trying to protect the family unit, protect traditional masculinity, protect traditional femininity, and protect children from this agenda that we have at the moment, where they're being sexualized at ever younger and younger ages. That stuff really riles me up, and I'm very against that kind of thing. And I like that she's always talking about that and pushing that. Most
Well,
definitely.
obviously, Candace has become a very kind of polarizing figure, even within the right or conservative side of politics, where we're now having these discussions around her views and maybe not agreeing on certain aspects of it. Like, she's become that very recently. So
We're all
go back a
polarizing,
few-
though.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to put yourself in her,
No.
but that's what I'm trying to, because
No.
like, if you look up, if you look up, I see, like, she's got her tour coming up, which I don't think is going to happen. I personally think, I don't think you should kick people out of the country for their views, as abhorrent as they are. But I find it, like, I just don't know if you're actually watching what she's saying, and when you're saying she's doing good work, are you agreeing with what she's saying? Like, people just saying things because it's outrageous, and it's like, is it brave in
the thing.
itself?
This is the thing, though. You can like someone and not agree with everything that they say, as an example, right? So I'm mature enough and old enough to be able to say, okay, I like this, but I don't agree with that. But I like,
Sure, but
you know what I mean?
but saying good work, I like your work, right? And then you, like, just scroll her Twitter, and essentially every second tweet is about Jews, and that wasn't who Candace used to be a year ago. And some of the stuff that she's saying, and even on the specific video that you're commenting on her comment, it makes people go, like, I question. I don't think I know you, and I don't think you hold those views. In fact, even in this conversation, you always refer back to Judeo-Christian values. So Radic, where do you stand on this issue, and where do you stand on where, I guess, supporting somebody on some of their views, or where you go, okay, hold on, the person that I'm amplifying, I also hold some sort of responsibility to, counter somebody just spewing lies. Even if I like them as a person, I'll call them out for it.
Well, look, I have strongly mixed feelings on Candace. 10 years ago, she was very young and she was a lefty. Now, then I very much admired her very articulate support for Donald Trump. And I also, during the COVID madness and the vaccine madness and all that garbage, I became a very big fan of Candace Owens. And I think she's quite likable, okay? And I do like her fearlessness, okay? Now, what has happened recently is that we have clearly learned that Candace is still quite new to political ideas. And I think what she's been doing is she's been reading one or two books, or even just one or two essays from some people with some fairly, let's say, unorthodox views, and she just completely believes it. She doesn't go and double check it. She's crapping on that the Zionists, look, I don't want to misquote it because I know she is badly misquoted by her critics, okay?
You don't have to misquote it. I could play you video after video, yeah. The Frankists are Zionists, everything but Jews, but everything that means Jews. Go on.
That's right. Now, I have been very interested for many years in Jewish history, okay? I'm born a Protestant, a boring Church of England. Okay, but and I'm not particularly religious. Okay, although I'm a big admirer of Christianity and Judaism, but she has gone on. I've never heard of these Frankists before 2 weeks ago. Okay,
me neither, and I'm a Jew.
That's right. Well, I'm interested. Okay, right. Now she's come up with this view, which she really. I mean, if Candace believes something, she really believes it, and she wants the whole world to believe it. Okay. So she's, as I understand it, she believes there was this small little, very obscure Polish Jewish group 200 years ago who were basically renounced for Judaism, became extreme sexual perverts, and lo and behold, 100 years later, we get Zionism out of that group of people. Well, I know a bit about the history of Zionism in the 1890s, Theodore Herzl and other people, and I mean, this was just bizarre, okay? And then she goes out there and says this stuff. And I think that what she needs to, I think she does have a good brain, but it's underdeveloped. And she's just too cocky and confident, and she gets misled. I believe, give her another 5 to 10 years. I certainly don't want to cancel her. I'm with Senator Babette. I support her tour. David Irving, the Holocaust denier, very academic guy, okay, and very, very much considered a baddie by mainstream society. In the 1980s and the 1990s, he tried to come to Australia a few times, and the Hawke government wouldn't let him come. And that made him very famous in Australia. He sold a lot of books in Australia. Now, there's another country in the Northern Hemisphere, which is basically Australia's twin, except in every way, constitutionally, economically, culturally, politically. It's called Canada. It's exactly the same as Australia. It's a little bit bigger, but it's cold and we're hot. Canada never banned David Irving in the 1980s and the 1990s. And no one knows who he was, and he barely sold any books. So the banning helps him, okay? Helps Candace. So these silly people that want to shut her up, that do not want her views to be rightly or wrongly, they do not want her views to be amplified. Well, they've just made Candace Owens.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The Streisand effect is real. The more you ban someone, I felt it myself when I was banned from New Zealand. In that period, I became a lot more popular in New Zealand. So I totally agree with that. But I guess the question is here, when as I think as a leader and as a politician, an elected politician here in Australia by people that believe in you and believe in what you say and do, I think if you then go and I guess give the tick of approval in such a way where you just go, I love your work, at a time where it's, okay, there's serious questionable stuff coming from her, not negating the stuff that I was a massive Candace fan. I was on her show during COVID. So, but I'm looking at it now going, hold on, this person, they're going through something. I don't know, since the Daily Wire, whether it's a chip on the shoulder over the fact that she got, her hate for Jews has suddenly come because she hates little Ben Shapiro. Get with the program. Half the world hates Ben Shapiro. You don't have to hate every Jew just because you got fired by one. It's not, but But the
I would
point.
give it time, Harvey. I would give it. Look, I think she's going through a little phase. She's had other phases. And,
I'm not worried about Candace. I'm not worried about Candace. I'm worried about my big brother here, Senator Babette, who has a lot of support, I think, even within the Jewish community. And then people go, what the heck? Are we losing Babette to the dark side? Are we losing you, Babette?
I'm not going anywhere. I'm always talking about Judeo-Christian values. And I do like Candace. I'm not going to back down from saying I like Candace. If there's any Jew hatred stuff, obviously I'm not going to agree with that. But I can separate different issues that she talks about and still appreciate the work that she does. I can say, hey, I like what you're talking about on all the gender stuff, on all the family stuff. Great. I don't like what you're talking about hating on Jews for no reason. That I don't like. But I still think that she has a valuable space, a valuable position in this space, and I still want to hear what she has to say. I can separate that and say, I don't agree with this, but I agree with that. That's not a problem for me.
Do you not feel like you should do that though, especially if you're posting that you support the work, and then on top of that, promoting a tour which she is likely going to continue if she came here, which I think she should be allowed to. But I know what she's going to do on the tour here. She is going to spout a lot of those very questionable ideas.
Well, you know what? If she does, I will be going to her show if she does come. If she does, we can have another podcast and, we can dismantle...
But she's already doing it now. Why do you have to wait till she does it here when she does it now?
When she's in Australia, when she's on our soil and we see her tour and we see what she says, we can go and have a look and then we can have another chat and say we don't agree with X, Y, Z of what she said. Okay. And that's completely fine. I mean, we don't have to agree with everything that this woman says.
But if she's saying outrageously vile stuff, would you condemn her for saying that? Or would you just go, well, I don't agree with that? It's like... if you're back in the 19... Why wouldn't you? Why?
Because she has the right to say what she says, but I would say I don't agree with it. I would definitely say that.
You wouldn't condemn somebody if they're saying something like you would easily condemn the Greens. You condemn the Greens.
Is such a strong word, and when you say things like condemn, it puts something in people's mind that maybe speech isn't good. Maybe
you do that to the Greens. Why would you do?
I cannot agree.
Why would you do that to the Greens, but you wouldn't do it to her if she has as abhorrent views, if not worse, than the Greens on some issues? If she says something worse or acts worse in any way, and not just to her, to anyone, why is there some sort of protection to somebody on our side if they act abhorrent? But there is.
No but Avi, I'd love to jump in here. I have spoken to...
Sit back.
I've spoken to other people who are very excited that Candace Owens is coming.
That's fine.
Other Australians. No, I'm saying, and they don't think her views are abhorrent. I'm just saying,
I'm asking you if they are.
I'm just saying, it's a general kind of, there's no general consensus on her views. Australia-wide. I know politically there's different views, and depending on where people are sitting, they might have different views on some of the things that she's saying. Now, I definitely don't agree with all the stuff that she's saying, and I used to be a big fan of Candace Owens and watch her all the time, but I haven't watched her for the last year or 2 years because I just can't be bothered, because I feel like she's going down a different track. Like John Ruddick says, she's trying to find her feed or her audience or whatever it is, and she's just saying some out there things and crazy things, and maybe she's not mature enough.
She's saying some crazy things,
and she doesn't understand perhaps the platform that she has when she says these things, and the look that it has. So sure, certain people might have to address it in a different manner, but a lot of people are very excited to be going to her show, and
I'm not.
It's a very tough type of issue, because a lot of the politics that she does share and that she does talk about are a lot of things that I do strongly agree with as well. So I do share a lot of her.
Would you condemn? Would you condemn somebody on your side?
Sorry.
What were you asking?
No,
are you going to her show?
No, I'm not going to her show.
Would you? Me? No, I've seen enough online. I'm good. But let me ask you. I'll take you up on that offer to go through point by point what she said in an Australian show, but she's probably not going to have it, so it's all irrelevant now. But my question to you, Rukshan, would you condemn somebody if you found that they had abhorrent views on anything, even if they're from your side? So when you're discussing.
Condemning. I condemn people all the time for
things
they say and do. So I do that all the time.
Would there be a protection if it's? Would there be a protection?
Yes, but some of the things that she's being condemned for issues which are borderline in disagreement between different people. So, she's controversial in that sense, and that's why that I say that she's polarizing. Now, there are definitely things that she's saying that can be flat out condemned.
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the stuff that's like questionable. I'm talking about, questioning the Holocaust or the atrocities within the Holocaust, the medical, the procedures that were happening in the Holocaust, like that kind of stuff, which is, they've all been done before. She's not new at something. The only thing here that's different is that Candace is new to doing it, and she's gotten worse and worse by the day. The question is, when it's on your side, I'm just trying to understand if there's some sort of protection. Like, do you feel like if somebody's on your side, you need to protect them by just ignoring or, avoiding? Or do you feel like if it was, because I just feel like this is hypocrisy, we're so quick. If the other side says something half as bad, we will jump at them. Why is there then suddenly a protection for one that because we were once fans, or we agree with half, or we agree with 90% of what they say? Why is there a protection? If somebody says crazy shit, we should treat it all the same, no?
Yeah, no, look,
well, we should have some solidarity with our own side. There is some element of teamwork. But look, I think that what Candace's, sadly has gone too far. So I won't be attending her event. I'd love to have a private lunch with her because I have no antipathy towards her. I'm not angry at her or anything. I actually feel sorry for her. She's just sort of like, I think she's overly zealous. That's what she is at this stage. I think she's had a recent conversion to hardline Christianity, and that might be a part of it as well. But look, in terms of as your overall point, Avi, is a very good one. Of course, we should be critical of our own side when it is required, when they go too far. Now, we don't want to we don't want to just do it at the drop of a hat. I mean, I was in the stupid Liberal Party for about 30 years. I couldn't hang around after they did the trio. They locked us down for 2 years. I left them after a year and a half. I was pleading with them. I said, what the hell are we doing? Sold us out on global warming and got us into $1 trillion worth of debt. So I thought, okay, well, see you later, Liberal Party. 3 strikes and you're out. So of course I'm critical of Donald Trump on his trade policy. Now it's not the end of the world. It's just another tax, okay? But he's wrong on it. He's been wrong on it, to his credit. He's been wrong on it since the 1980s. He's got crapped on about stupid tariffs for a very long time. So we should be critical of our own side. But when you're in a political party, sometimes I have disagreements with some of the libertarians in other states, but we, for the sake of the party, we do want to sort of, try and keep things together, and that is understandable when you're in a political party. But commentators like Avi and Rukshan, well, your job is to hold politicians to account. So no problem there. You're not really part of a team. You're meant to be, fierce defenders of truth.
Yeah.
That
I
is
think with Candace thing. I think she exposes herself. If you just let her talk, she talks, and
I agree. My issue here was not even Candace.
There's no need to condemn it because, what she's doing is actually damaging her own brand.
Honestly, this whole conversation was not.
That's the thing.
Because Babette started this by saying batshit crazy. I know he's denying that he didn't say that Carmela is batshit crazy. Batshit crazy Americans, and then no, I'm just messing. I think it's just, I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, especially when you are willing. I get it. You don't have to condemn everything and everyone, especially when you're in a political party, especially when you're playing politics. That's almost part of the game, is when you know when to keep your mouth shut. But I do think that if you're going to jump online and write, "I love your work," the elephant in the room and something that everyone's talking about, the thing that they're trending on for days, kind of comes up, and people question, well, really, what is the motive for a senator?
Obviously, you have to talk about it in context. Hang on, talk about it in context of what she actually said in that tweet. Let's not forget.
I agree with that.
I agree. She said it's not Muslims, it's not Jews, it's not Christians, it's Satanists or whatever she said. That's what I was referring to.
I agree with that. You did say it in context, in that context, and that does make like that. When I read it, I was thinking you clearly haven't watched the video that it's pertaining to, or you just didn't understand. Like maybe you don't know what Kabbalists are. You don't know what she's talking about, and you're just like, I love your work, just because you love the diversity of.
Post, though.
No. That post, that comment. Where is it? It's that comment's just her resharing. I don't know where it is resharing that thing. So it's very possible that you didn't see that, and that makes sense. Like, I'm in no way saying that you agree with any of her abhorrent views. I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's true at all, just because I know you. And as a lifelong Jew, I've learned to know when somebody doesn't like you and when they're using coded language about you, or they're using the old done and redone conspiracies about your community, or talking about your religion. It's not like it's not really my religion. It's my culture, because I'm not personally practicing, but I grew up in ultra Orthodox Judaism, so I know what the things that they're taking out of context, or the words that they're using and they're just misusing. And you go, I can see what somebody's doing here, and I know that that's not you. I guess the question to me would be, is if somebody's in your position, do you hold more responsibility? Maybe you don't. Maybe that's the answer. You don't. Do you hold more responsibility in when you say, I support somebody's work, at a time when it's become pretty clear that their work is beyond controversial, and, do you then have to at least explain your position, and or are you happy to be like that? But I think we've talked it right out.
I'm explain absolutely everything that I do on X, for God's sakes. I mean, people can infer whatever they like on X, but my intention is one thing. They can infer whatever they like. I couldn't give a stuff what other people think. To be honest, I just do whatever I want to do at the time that I want to do it. And in that particular case, I was referring to what she said about the Satanists, and that's all there is to it. There's nothing else apart from that. Apart from that, I will be going to her show. If she says anything reprehensible, I'll be back to report to you guys. And I'll say exactly what she said, and I'll say I agree or I don't agree.
Yeah, we look forward
we'll do another
to
podcast.
He's always inviting himself onto podcasts. Have you noticed that, Rukshan? Like this,
Mate,
actually, today was the first one we invited him.
You don't get me on
actually,
here enough. The very first time I was ever interviewed was by you and Rukshan, Avi. The very first time, interview number 1, after I was first elected 2 and a bit years ago.
Radik, do you like how he's throwing us under the bus? He's trying to blame us for his downfall.
Yes. Well, he's proven to be a very skilled politician in just 2.5 years. So this is why I hope he reconsiders his repeated threat to that he's only a one-termer.
I don't think I'm going to do it again. I think look, I actually don't like the idea of career politics. I think there should be term limits of some sort for politicians. You come in, you do your time, and then you go. And
yeah, but Ralph,
the other issue I have.
Can I put the counter position to you?
Sure.
Term limits in a democracy, yes, in theory is a good idea. Okay. However, at the moment, and you know better than anybody in Canberra, there are very, very few good politicians. I count 7 good senators, including yourself. Okay. Now, since there's so few, and since the baddies are so numerous in the major parties, and being a sitting senator, and you've made, you've built a pretty good name and following for yourself, you are in a position of leadership. So what? Look, if this was ancient Athens, yeah, step aside, have a term limit, okay. But I mean, we are your messaging is repeatedly saying that we are facing a civilizational crisis. That civilization is at a turning point, and we could. One path is we could end up in George Orwell's 1984, but if there's some good people around, we could avert it. And we could go back and have a happy life, and we could have a peaceful 21st century. We could get the government a lot smaller. We could bring back prosperity. We could get rid of all the woke BS. We can have, it could be like the 1980s and the 1990s again. So, I mean, now you can go back to your professional career. You'll probably make more money. But, I mean, that just simply increases the chances of us going down to 1984, because without good leadership, at the end of the day, we can have the best commentators in the world. They can be the best commentators in the world, but it comes down to the legislature. And you just happen to be there, okay? And I'm thinking, why the hell would you want to walk away?
I wouldn't say it's walking away. I'm saying more open up the field for somebody else to have a go and maybe have a different view, a better view, who knows, as to how things should be done, and come and have their voice in this place. I think more people should join the major parties, to be honest. I think more people should join the Liberal Party and join the Labor Party, heck, even join the Greens, and bring these parties back to normality. Because what's happening right now is only the really super passionate people are joining these parties, and they're taking it too far in the wrong direction. We need average people that have, middle of the road views to join these parties and be involved as well, not just the fringes.
The major parties are basically Liberal and Labor, are very powerful. They've got lots of fruits to have, lots of things, trinkets to have. Parliamentary seats, staffing positions, lobbying contracts, statutory board. They've got lots of gifts to hang out. So they are a magnet for careerists, opportunists, and spivs. And that's who dominates the major parties. We all know there's good people in there, but they are very much a minority. And the careerists and the opportunists have always got a lot more motivation. Now, Senator Babette has just said that people should join Liberal and Labor. Well, I completely disagree. They should be joining. There's one political party in this country which has really got the best hope we've got to turn things around. That's the Libertarian
One
Party.
Nation. Oh.
What? No, thank you. No, I would like to make the case, gentlemen. Give me 30 seconds.
Make it. You got it.
On the left-hand side of Australian politics, we have a party of government called Labor, and we have a 10 to 12% party called the Greens. Now, the Greens are purist. Now, they might be purely wrong, but they don't give an inch, okay? They're militant, they're ideological, okay? And they attract 10 to 12% of the people. And what does that 10 to 12% give them? Gives them a lot of senators, sometimes the balance of power, gives them people in the upper house and the state parliaments. They occasionally win a lower house seat. It applies pressure to Labor's left flank, and it prevents Labor moving to the centre. They have to pretend that they're fairly left-wing, or they'll lose more to the left. Now, what do we have over on the right? Well, I've got a lot of friends in all those other little parties, okay, but it's a motley crew and it's disorganised. And we can say to our voters, at the last election, the UAP and the Libertarians had a 2-for-2 preference swap. But look, half the people that voted for us, they might vote one UAP, they'll vote two coalition. That's all, and one Libertarian, two coalition. Or it just people don't follow how to vote, okay? That because they think for themselves. Now, what we need on the right, we need a mirror version of the Greens, which is an ideological party, an intelligent party, a party that doesn't give an inch, a party that is rooted not on a personality, but on very hardcore principles, the principles of libertarianism, Harvey Milei-style libertarianism, which approaches every single political issue through one prism. How can we make the government smaller? Because the government is dangerous. Now, if you approach every angle through that, we can become a 10 to 12% party. We will probably not become a party of government, but we can have the same influence that the Greens have got and on the right, and we can shift the Liberals and the Nationals to the right. What's happening now with the Greens, they're the most powerful party this century in Australia. They've dragged Labor to the left, and in the process, they've dragged the silly Liberal Party to the left. The Liberal Party needs an anchor on the right. There's only one option, gentlemen. It's the Libertarian Party, and I believe we've got growth. We've got the local council elections this weekend. You interviewed Sean Masters last night, who's very impressive. I think we're going to go pretty good in about 3 days' time in these local council elections. It's going to feed into the momentum of the growing libertarian movement. That's my pitch.
Love your work, John. They got that in time as well. Jesus, these comments are coming through. Oh, technical issues happening as we say. I guess the only fair thing to do is to give Babette a chance to counter that with the UAP. I think you're the last man standing on the UAP because from what I understand is, what's his name? Craig Kelly left you, went to One Nation. That was short-lived and now is starting his own party. Can you give us any insight into that before you give us a pitch?
Well, I'm actually not sure what Craig.
Why did he leave you guys?
I haven't spoken to him. Why did he leave us?
Yeah.
I think with the UAP, obviously we're not contesting any elections at the moment until the next one's coming up. There's really no harm in it. There's just nothing to really do with the UAP right now in between elections. So he thought he'd try over at One Nation, which I don't know anything about. But
yeah.
Whatever he does next, I'm happy for him and I'll support him. As far as what John Ruddick was saying, I'm not going to counter because I don't completely disagree with John Ruddick. I think at the end of the day, there really does need to be a right-leaning party to drag the Liberals and the Nationals to the right a little bit more than what they are. So kind of like what the Greens are to the Labor Party, that definitely needs to happen. I mean, in an ideal world, I would love to see people join the major parties, and because obviously it's going to be very hard for us to win lower house seats. Vote for us in the upper house and make sure that we can get some senators into power to hold these parties accountable. But in the lower house, it's at this stage anyway, as the landscape is at the moment. Maybe in the future it'll change, but at the moment, vote for your good centre right or centre candidates in the lower house. Vote for guys like me in the upper house. I mean, one day that potentially could change, where parties like mine could potentially form government. I don't think that time is right now. It could be 20 years away for all I know. And when that time comes, I'll say something different. But, I still want people to join the major parties, your Labours and your Liberal, mostly your Liberals, because if you join, you don't have to vote for them, but if you join on paper at least, eventually you'll have a choice as to who goes on the ticket for the next election. So then you can pick people like Matt Canavan, you can pick people like Jared Rennick, who, by the way, he lost his spot on the ticket by, I think it was only one vote. That's all he needed, one vote. And he would have been on the ticket, but obviously he's not now. So you can choose people like that, choose people like Alex Antic, Senator Alex Antic, who can then be on that ticket and be up for the next election. So there is a place for people joining in those major parties, if you're smart about how you vote anyway.
May I have
No, you had your say, mate. You had your say.
Okay. Look, let's say the UAP at the last federal election won 6 senators and 20 lower house seats. They wouldn't have formed government, but they would have been on the rise. They had Mr. Palmer's backing, and then let's say three federal elections after that, they formed government. Okay. And we would say, oh, that's a success. All of Australia's problems would have been solved. No, I don't agree. What happens when you become a party of government is you become a magnet for careerists, opportunists, and spivs. Okay, and so that what will happen is the UAP government would probably be pretty good for a little while, but very quickly it'll just become what the Liberal Party is now. It's a vehicle. So you got 40 in a democracy in the world today. You can have 40% of the community will be voting for a party of government on the right. 40% will be voting for a party of government on the left. And those parties will be in government. They might change their name, I think, but they'll be the same thing. There'll be people who try to keep making the government bigger and bigger. So what the libertarians say is, what the political landscape needs more than anything else is a really hardcore ideological party on the right, which is all about one thing, making the government smaller. Now, if we kept growing, then we would become a magnet for the spivs and the people who are just, so many people are in politics, okay?
That's a good word, spivs.
Yes. They're in politics for the adulation. They're not so much in it for the power. The power is held by the senior bureaucrats, not the politicians. The politicians are largely show ponies. The politicians can exercise power, but it's really the senior bureaucrats who do. Now, of course, the exception to what I've just said is the magnificent case study we're seeing unfold in Argentina, where we do have a radical libertarian running the show, and hopefully he's going to send a message to the whole world about how magnificent, how much of a blessing to mankind radical libertarianism can be. He's turning around that basket case. But what will happen is after 20 years, if Malay continues to be the president, his party takes over the Congress, it'll just become another party of government, unless Malay in the meantime can really slash it permanently, which is what we hope he does.
You know, what's your favorite? Argentina was at one point in time not too dissimilar to Australia.
Oh, yes.
Lots of natural resources, a democracy, Western values, and ethics. And look where socialism took them, to the point where you're basically eating your family pet because you don't have food to eat. Crazy. And I fear that Australia's going to end up in the same place until we eventually turn the ship around.
It's the curse of what happens when you've had 3 generations in a row of high prosperity. And that's what happened to Argentina. You're exactly right, Senator Babette. they were a very wealthy country. You know, they had the highest living standards in the world 100 years ago. And then people just think, oh, this is how it always is. Nothing can stop our prosperity. They don't know the hard times. And then it can, I say about Argentina, what happened there in the 1940s is Australia had Gough Whitlam for 3 years, and then he got kicked out. But they basically had Gough Whitlamism for about 60 years. And that's where it will lead to. A great nation can be reduced to poverty. But look, it's an extraordinary thing that's happening. And so far, the signs are looking very, very good, much quicker than we thought. And of course, when the mainstream media is not talking about Argentina now, that's a sign that things are going very, very good.
Well, Rukshan, is there anything you would like to add to this conversation? Are you starting a political party that you want to spruik as well?
No, look. No,
what about the Sri Lankan People's Party?
No. A lot later in life. I wouldn't get into politics so young. I think, when I'm a bit older, maybe like John Ruddick in his age.
Are you going to do a Kamala on us? You're Sri Lankan till then, and then suddenly you're going to come out with some other. You're going to be something else.
Race.
What are you going to come out? Tamil?
No. Now you're trying to make things controversial for me. No, not at all. I think I'll be very proud of my Sri Lankan heritage, but I'm true.
You should be, because you guys make literally the best chicken. I base cultures solely on their food. You can tell a good culture by their dish. Don't you guys agree, or am I alone on this? Come on,
no, Sri Lankan chicken curry is pretty good. This is like the third episode we've talked about Sri Lankan.
Because I eat
it's an ongoing thing.
Do you know every time I get a new Sri Lankan neighbor, I knock on their door and I talk to them about Sri Lankan chicken, and it's true, Rukshan, because you've seen the CCTV where they've bought me Sri Lankan chicken over because I've convinced them to do so.
But today's been a very interesting discussion. We've got Senator Babette from the federal side of politics and John Ruddick from the state side of politics, and you're seeing a lot of crossover in terms of the issues that, whether it's a federal politician or a state politician faces. Do you think that's going to become more and more blurred in terms of, those lines between what state and federal politicians actually have to deal with as these issues become more and more, when these globalists, I guess, we were talking about that earlier today, how they're infiltrating all sides of government, even the councils. Are we all kind of dealing with the same issues regardless of, our status in politics?
I think the globalist agenda definitely permeates through the entirety of our political system. Right from where I sit here to the states, right down to the councils, because you're seeing councils make, in my opinion, questionable decisions to comply with essentially the United Nations mandates and things of that nature. So it definitely permeates through.
Somebody commented that the radical libertarianism should be is that they're asking if that's just right. I'm assuming they mean, is that like
right in today's context, libertarianism would be considered, yes, right wing, no doubt about it. If you go back to the 1970s, the libertarians were extremely against the Vietnam War. Okay, now look, I mean, people say that we're pro marijuana. Okay, well, we're not pro marijuana. We just don't want the cops knocking on your door if you're smoking a joint. We probably think it's a bad idea if you do.
In all fairness, Joe Rogan's pretty pro-marijuana, and he's like your poster boy for libertarianism, is he not?
Well, okay, look, we don't make a moral judgment on marijuana.
Look at you backing away from that real quick.
Okay, but look. Okay, so look, in the 70s, people thought, we're anti-war. Okay, but look, the common denominator is we're anti-war because we just don't believe. That's the worst thing the government can do. These stupid politicians get us into unnecessary wars most of the time. But look, in today's context, no doubt about it, because the left is dominant. Back in the 1980s and the 1990s, the right was dominant around the world. Okay, the right, and basically the world had a good 2 or 3 decades there. It all turned around with with the Iraq War when the right went too far, and then the subprime crisis, and Obama comes in. And ever since Obama came in, the left is completely dominant. Now they are the establishment, and we are the rebels on the outside. So, but it will move around, okay? But it's really, look, the divide is between authoritarianism and libertarianism. That's the great divide today.
We're talking about the war. What are you guys' thoughts on this weapons expo that's happening in Victoria? There's a lot of controversy surrounding that. As politicians,
Well,
do
You
you
guys
think...
love guns, don't you? Both of
I
you.
wasn't going to go to the expo because I was busy doing something else. But now, because the Marks are so upset, I'm going to go just to piss them
You're
off.
going. You're going to the. You're
I'm
going.
going.
Oh, good on
I'm
you.
going Thursday night or Friday.
Give him credit where we've given him a hard time today, but hey, I've got to give him credit for going to the.
I'm going to go to the Weapons Expo. It's going to be great.
Are you?
It's going to be fantastic.
Are you a shooter?
I am not a shooter. No.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind being one if I could, more easily get my hands on some firearms. But as you know, it's a bit tough in Australia to do that.
Victoria's the
There's
worst.
so many restrictions in Victoria, especially, you've got to go to a gun range every so often. You've got to actively shoot, basically. I actually do believe that that Australian citizens should be able to own weapons for self-defense. Not so much self-defense against your neighbor, but more so defending yourself against the tyranny of government, which if you look throughout history is a constant. It's a constant. All governments essentially become tyrannical at some point. So I think we should have the right to own firearms as a bulwark against that, against authoritarianism.
Well, Radik, where are you on this?
Oh, well, Senator Babette summed it up perfectly. The American founding fathers, when they did the Bill of Rights, number one is free speech. The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, I've never fired a gun in my life. Okay, I'm not particularly. I know people who love their guns.
You've never fired.
Never. Now, look, it's. I know people who can talk about guns all day. Okay, I don't know the first thing they're talking about. I'm not interested. Well, what Senator Babette says is entirely correct. An armed citizenry, is a counterweight to a tyranny, and this is why when the communists come to power, the first thing they do is they disarm the citizens, because you can disarm John Howard. He's not a communist, but he did a dreadful thing to this country over a freak incident in Tasmania. Now what we've got, there's still a ton of guns out there held by the government, held by the military, held by the police and the intelligence agencies. Now, I'll tell you, so we are slowly sleepwalking into a tyranny, and we saw that with COVID. Now, with the silly vaccine, the warp speed vaccine, in America, about 65% of Americans took two doses, and in Australia, I believe the official statistics, I believe it was 98% of people took at least two vaccines.
Let's just be careful what we say here because we're on mainstream platforms. Just conscious. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, I do believe. Now, they were wonderful vaccines. I mean, you were just crazy if you didn't take them. Okay, I'm lining up to get my seventh tomorrow. My seventh. Okay. Now, but look, it was interesting that there was a very big difference between the uptake in the US and Australia, and even though the corporations in America were just as sort of saying, just like they were in Australia, and the media and the government, it was the same level of pressure, but there was a very big difference. And why was that? Because the American government at the end of the day knows they can't push the American people around that much. But the Australian people are now defenceless. So this is why people, since the Magna Carta, since all the great documents that have preserved our freedom, they put the right to bear arms right up the top. John Howard made a dreadful error. And I believe that 97% of Australians do not agree with me or Senator Babette on this issue, or the Libertarian Party. But yes, we are more radical than the Shooters Party. The Shooters Party just wants to be able to have sporting shooting events and stuff like that. No, we believe in the right to bear arms to prevent a tyranny. And we're right.
I'm happy to settle at self-defense.
Well, the only reason that they may not agree is because they don't understand history. That could be why. They don't understand that eventually your future is going to be a government boot on your face. That's where we end up eventually. That's what they don't get.
Yeah, that's right. And it should be, the Liberal and the National Party should have been making this case. But they don't, okay, because they basically...
But the Liberal Party is that they claim this as their win. This is one of the,
That's right.
John Howard's big victory that is often spoken about around the world. Whenever there's a mass shooting in the US, Australia's John Howard's gun policy, and they always mentioned that it was the conservative government, the very conservative government.
Speaking of the Liberal Party, right, guys, a comment about what happened today in Canberra. So today we had what was called a farmers' protest here in Canberra, where the farmers showed up, where basically they were protesting, among other things, the banning of live sheep export and all the restrictions that are, being eventually going to be placed upon them because of net zero, right? You had the Nationals and the Liberal Party up on stage at this farmers' protest, going, "Oh, we stand with you. Vote for us, and we're gonna reverse some of these bad decisions that the Labor Party made." When it was the Liberal Party themselves that signed us up to net zero under Scott Morrison. So I find it, really upsetting that people have such short memories, because you had all these farmers, clapping and cheering, "Yeah, you're going to save us," when it was literally the people that were on the stage that put them in the position that they're in now. Just a little comment there about what I saw today about the Liberal Party.
You really don't like the Liberal Party, eh?
You know what? In opposition, Senator Babette, the Liberals sound fantastic. They say all the good things in opposition. The only problem is when they get into government. That's when they sell everything out. And I do believe it's because there's no right-wing anchor to their right, keeping them in check. But yeah, they do sound good in opposition. And this is but they disappointed government.
Yeah.
Speaking of people
even Tony Abbott, okay. Now since Tony Abbott's lost the prime ministership, Tony Abbott has given 2 or 3 speeches overseas, which were absolutely fantastic speeches on how stupid global warming is. Okay. When he was the prime minister, John Howard did the same. They went along with it. Okay, so when it counted, even
I know, but I always find like Tony Abbott's a great example of somebody that I feel like we thought was so promising, was saying all the right things, and got into government and totally, was weak, had zero backbone, and then when was out was saying all the great things again. And I feel like is it that they have to, when they're when they take office, they kind of have to play. They don't want to get ousted as well, so they're playing this tightrope where they're trying to protect their job, trying to ensure that and having to compromise on whatever their positions are. But they always walk away, and it seems like they're disappointed in their own execution of the job at the end. You know what I mean? Like even Trump, in a way, like when you look at Trump over that period, all the talk about taking on big tech and, until the very end, I always felt through the last Trump administration that he talked about it a lot, but he never thought it was going to come for him until the last day it did. Literally after Jan 6, they nuked all his social media. And I think he sat there and he goes, "Oh my God, why did I just talk for 4 years and not go and actually deal with the problem?" But I feel like all of them.
In Trump's defense, okay, look, he was the first president since George Washington who was a plain citizen before he becomes a president. So he walks off Fifth Avenue, he gets into the White House. I mean, every other one was a former senator or congressman or governor or military general. Yeah. So Trump gets in there, right? And half of his White House staff were MAGA, and half of them were GOP establishment. Okay, well, who knows how to sort of manipulate things better? The establishment. They've been around Washington forever. Okay, and then, of course, he's got to put up with the stupid Russian collusion delusion, which was all just made up. That went on for 3 years. It crippled him. Trump's sitting there thinking, what the hell's going on here? Okay, so that crippled him. Now, then, of course, he had weak Republicans in Congress. Now, Trump has taken over the Republican Party. Okay, now, look, if he wins, and people I know in the libertarian movement, they are very skeptical that Trump's second term will be better. They might be right, but I am quite hopeful if he does happen to win. I am quite hopeful that he's learned his lesson, and he absolutely will on this occasion drain the swamp.
We can only hope, because he didn't drain it the first time.
I think he did. I think he did pretty good. But I do like that was one thing that really stood out to me that bothered me. Right up until the end, and thankfully since then Elon has come on board, so who's kind of been our messiah when it comes to free speech. Now, just before
I reckon Zuckerberg is going to do an Elon. I reckon over the next 5 to 10 years he's going to turn into a right winger. You watch.
Yeah, there are signs of it, but I don't know if he actually even has control of Facebook anymore. If you know what I mean, like I think
Yeah.
I don't feel like
You
he
guys saw
does
that
because
letter he wrote, yeah? He
yeah,
wrote that letter.
well, that letter, for example, he says he regrets the COVID, basically working for the government during COVID and censoring accounts and kicking people. But then I went straight away and I looked at Meta's policy, and it's exactly the same. They're still doing it. In fact, hopefully that silly comment you made about the best vaccines in the world doesn't get us nuked from there, because they still implement that crap.
Yeah, I think he's saying as an individual, because he's seeing
Yeah.
someone like Elon.
I think he's
speaking up
talking as an
and
individual. I
standing
don't
up for
think
himself.
I don't think it's going to have much impact on the actual thing. But one thing that does have impact is this comment here. I quite find offensive in 2024. Murphy, why are there no women on this panel, assuming all our genders? Rukshan, how does it feel being an Indian Jamaican female that you're being ignored?
I'm very, very offended, definitely. Especially like after everything that we've done as women to get to this position where I can come on here and speak my mind. To be not recognized as a woman is a very big insult to myself. So, Murphy, I think you should really be careful when you're assuming people's genders. I am a woman. I have said I am a woman, and that is what I am.
Does anyone want to argue with him about his womanhood? I dare you right now. Do not.
And I apologize to all the actual real women out there that I may have offended.
Murphy, I hope you live in your shame, stew in it, because Rukshan is the most beautiful lady on this panel. Radik's number 2. Senator Babette's below me.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, good.
I identify as a female Fijian para-Olympian.
Yeah. I think we can. Yeah, we are actually the official Australian Olympic female boxing team for the 2028 Olympics. You're welcome.
All gold.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, or lady and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Babette, I'm super glad that you spared at least one flag for us in 2 hours. Radik, don't go too radical on us, and maybe hit a shooting range. You might enjoy it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
And Rukshan, until next week, I hope you enjoyed that holiday of yours. But anyone who wants to catch up on any of the episodes, the opposition.show. What do you reckon? How do you reckon that went? Do you reckon Babette's ever going to talk to me again? He's still on the line. Is he still on the line? He's still on the line. Damn.
No idea.
I'm gonna get some phone calls after this show. He's gonna be like, "Oh, that Harvey." Nah, that was good. That's the first time that's actually been the opposition podcast for Senator Babette, right?
I've been like every episode. I'm trying to pick fights, and then I finally found one. But thank you so much for your time, guys. It was a good episode, and I hope you guys at home enjoyed it. You can check out all the comments on online and get involved in the conversation. Over the next few weeks, we will figure out how to do it all on Rumble. The technical side is a bit harder, especially because I'm in charge of it. Rukshan,
yeah. Have fun on your holiday, Harvey.
I love how you're putting this on me, mate. I love how you're putting this on me.
Have fun on your holiday, mate.
Stay safe.
I got to stay here and work, man. Have fun.
This is the music.